Hello, my name is James Kelly, and I've got the pleasure of interviewing Michael Dawson for the conference Awaken to Love. And Michael is an author of 3 books and a teacher of A Course in Miracles, and he's done workshops all around the world. And Michael is currently living in Australia. Welcome, Michael. It's a pleasure to chat to you today.
Nice to see you again, James.
And Michael, I first met Michael actually when he lived here in Scotland. I'm from living in Scotland, and Michael's in Australia now, but Michael was at the Findhorn Foundation. Was it the late 80s, Michael, and 90s?
Yes, I became a guest in 82, a member in 84. I stayed about 20 years, apart from a short trip to Australia in between.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, the Findhorn Foundation is an international spiritual community in the northeast of Scotland. And Michael actually was teaching A Course in Miracles sometimes to the people he came to do workshops as part of the Findhorn Foundation. And that's when I first met Michael. He came in and he did a talk in the Findhorn Foundation. Actually, when we're on that subject, lots of people ask me, is the Findhorn Foundation really into A Course in Miracles? What would you say about that, Michael? For those people who are interested.
Well, it's a collection of individuals from all over the world. They're on different spiritual paths, and they were drawn there because there wasn't some fixed, definite teaching. So you'll meet all sorts there. So there's quite a few that study the Course in Miracles, but you'll have people who's interested in Buddhism and Hinduism and nature and ecology. It's a real mixed bag at Findhorn. And so, yes, there's a group there, along with the other groups. Yeah, many spiritual paths at Findhorn.
Yeah. And as you say, many spiritual paths have as their goal maybe to awaken to love. And that's the subject of our conference. And of course, we'll go into other subjects as well. But Michael, would you like to start off by saying, what would be, maybe if we're looking at the end goal, what is your experience of awakening to love? And that, as an experience or even as a concept, the awakening, what would that be for you to get to that stage of being awakened to love?
Oh, looking at it from the Course's perspective, you were asking me there, what does the Course say about that, or were you asking something personal?
So it could be both. So a little bit about the Course says and a little bit about what that is, what your experience of that is in your life. So it's the 2 things together.
Okay, well, we'd start with the Course. The Course says that we're created in the reality of God. A creator can only create like itself. An aspect of God is all love. So it's not a question for me of actually trying to find love, but I've obscured it along with a few million others on the planet who we really are. So our true nature is love, and by that I mean unconditional love. That's a love where you give without any thought of return. And the Course says early on, actually, on the first page, which I think I might actually have here somewhere, that the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love. That is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. Now, that's how the Course starts. It says you can't teach what love is because it's so beyond our imagination.
Yes, yes.
Here we follow special love, needy, dependent love. I love you if you love me. If you stop loving me, often there's pain and anger. So we've got our images of romantic love, but this is nothing whatsoever to do with what the Course is saying. So we use the word unconditional to give some sort of flavor, giving without thought of return. So the whole emphasis of the Course and what I'm trying to learn is to undo the blocks to love.
Yes.
It's like we're suns, they're always shining, but we've got these clouds over them. And the clouds, speaking simply, are judgments, or the judgments of myself and others are what are creating the clouds around me. And if these clouds start to remove, then you start to get glimpses of that light, that love, which is deep in each of us. So the path for me has got to be what the Course teaches, forgiveness. That, each day is a daily classroom of forgiveness. And there we see where the clouds are, whether I'm judging myself not doing too good, or if I'm judging others. And I'm only judging others because I have that judgment of myself anyway, just projected outwards. So it's really a process over, for most of us, a long period of time of discovering the clouds.
Yeah.
It's not seeking for love, it's seeking for the obstacles to love. So, and I'd still amaze myself that, there's another cloud that I didn't even know was there. And when I don't know they're there, I find the lesson keeps coming back. My closest, associates will press the button again. While in the past, I would say, well, that's obviously you're wrong.
Okay.
But, with time, I begin to sense, hey, this is recurring. This is something denied in me. This is one of the clouds. And, the first stage of forgiveness is actually feeling thankful for the person pressing your buttons. Otherwise, you wouldn't see what's in the unconscious and what's blocking that love.
Yeah.
Not, of course, easy, I mean, so many people I listen to dislike Trump,
Yes.
And I try not to say too much unless they open up. But really, they've got a Trump inside them. They don't want to see it, they deny it, and they project it out, and then they all hate Trump, and everyone agrees, But they need to heal the Trump within.
Yeah. And I love that bit. I was just smiling there, but to get to the point of being grateful for the lessons. So I like that, they're lessons maybe for me to learn, but they're also a gift in some ways, and to be grateful for that gift. I think that's a kind of real shift of looking at things.
In the course somewhere it says your brother is your savior, because it's in the mirror of relationships. We're going to see these judgments and these clouds over the sun of love. So we need all of our brothers to push our buttons. We wouldn't admit it normally, would we? But we need it.
Yeah.
And with their help, we could start to remove the clouds.
Yeah. Of course, you'd be grateful for a savior because they're there to save you from maybe your, as you say, your unconscious or whatever. And so it's amazing for us, obviously, when we're in the learning process or undoing of our forgiveness process, it's sometimes really hard to shift into that gratefulness and thankfulness for our savior who's in our face.
That's the hardest thing, because the ego's reflex is always to attack,
Okay.
If he thinks something's unfairly done, he's going to attack. So there's no healing here. The problem is now in the world, and it's not in you. And that's what we tend to do. We try then to change the world.
Yes.
And you might change, if you're lucky, someone, but the next one will pop up. And in fact, when I lived at Findhorn, I worked in most departments there, and I could see a pattern where someone sort of comes to a department. I was running maintenance for a while, and someone came and said, I had to escape from the kitchen. The person running that, really terrible.
Yes.
And Michael, you're not like, that's great. But then almost like the next day, a guest arrived,
Yes.
which mirrors the person who was running the kitchen, and her issue starts all over again.
Yes.
And now she wants to, and that we all played this game. But all the time it says, excuse me, it's just, here's your savior's just arrived.
Yes. Yeah.
Without a sense of humor, we'd never get through this course.
Yeah, it's like laughing at that tiny mad idea, or in the course. I mean, the laughter, I think, is so gentle laughter, obviously not a mocking thing.
That's right. And there's that lovely line in the course, and that's another sort of definition of forgiveness, is to smile gently at the ego.
Yeah, smile gently at the ego, yeah.
Otherwise you take it serious, and therefore you've made it real, and then you're off and running.
Yeah. And I think one of my favorite lines is, do not be afraid of it. Whatever you do, don't be afraid of the ego. And that's what, as you say, person running away from the kitchen to the maintenance department, they're afraid of the ego, and that's, or afraid of their projections. And yeah.
That's right. And that's the sign that we're so far from love, because the Course teaches that once this love dawns, you can't be afraid. It's impossible. Only egos are afraid. So you could be lined up, in front of a firing squad, and you would feel no fear, because there's just love. And that's, the people holding the guns are also you. So you wouldn't attack them. You'd be like stamping on your own foot. I mean, this is at the end of the spiritual path I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
So this is what, but that's kind of what I was trying to get at the start of this interview. So what would be the end of the spiritual path? What would that look like? And we'll maybe get back to how we get there. But so you, at the end of the day, when we wake up to love completely, there isn't any fear left. Is that what you think?
Right. Yes. The Course would say, you know, it says love and fear appear to be opposites, but they're not. Fear is just the absence of love.
Oh,
And
okay.
this is, here we're seeing the non-dual teachings of the Course. And, you know, in duality, love and fear are both real. A good metaphor perhaps might be a light. You can take a light into a dark room, it goes light, but you can't take a black lamp into a lighted room and make it go black, because, you know, black is the absence of light. And when the light is switched on, the dark doesn't hide under the curtains or under the floor, you know.
Yeah.
So it's unreal, and our egos are unreal in that sense, that we take it very seriously. So at the end of the path, the ego is seen through, it just disappears into the nothingness it is. There's love, and then you realize everything's the same. There's a complete oneness with everything. And therefore, you wouldn't attack. Even if you're being attacked, you might defend yourself physically, you know, prevent being killed or something. But that would be done still out of love with minimum force. So that'll be the first hallmark, is that you couldn't attack, because why would you attack yourself? Actually, it was a nice story to illustrate this with Mother Teresa. She took her nuns to New York, and she opened up a home for the homeless and the AIDS. And the local charity group came round to thank her. And they said to her, Mother Teresa, thank you for your social work. And she could be quite snappy, our Mother Teresa. I don't do social work. But, you know, look, you've opened this home, and, you know, the homeless are coming in. Don't tell me I do social work. That's me I'm picking up. That's Jesus I'm picking up.
Oh, wow.
And there it was, you know. She's helping herself. Why wouldn't you? You know, if you cut your finger, you'd put a plaster on it. And somebody else's finger is your finger, so you'd probably move to put a plaster on them. So, you know, this is the biggie. I think, you know, no separation, oneness with all. And what this means, of course, when you start to think about it, let's say in a marriage, you've got children.
Yes.
If you've got that, the love for your partner, and I say love for my wife, would actually be equal to all the people in the world. And the love for my children, and when I saw other children, it would be the same love for them. Now, you can't give the same love to, you know, the 7 billion people. It's not practical. But you wouldn't actually see a difference. And therefore, again, attack is impossible.
But we obviously, or most people only see a difference between loving the children that they have, or their partner, and they don't in that moment have the same experience that they're loving their boss at work, or they're loving the children at the other side of the world. But you're saying that that is actually what is happening.
If you reach that stage, you've lost your ego, you lost your individuality, you've got this oneness with all, then the love is, the Course says somewhere, love is not special. So the true love must be equal to, and not, I mean, be the same for the insects and the tree and the man next door, you know, and good old Donald Trump, and, you know, it'll be, because they're all you. They're all you. So you'd have the same love for everything.
Yeah, because special love makes those people in my family more to do with me. They're not me. Well, you see them as different, of course, but they're more me than someone at the other side of the world I haven't identified with.
That's why they use the word special. You single them out. You know, you decide to have a relationship with someone, they're special, and the other ones are not special. And then your children are more special because they're mine. You know, I made them, and so it runs. And that's where we're at. That's not a sin. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. That's where we start. The Course says every relationship begins as special. But we then have the opportunity through forgiveness to turn it into a holy relationship. Where we can start to use the relationship for truth and honesty and forgiveness and learning.
Okay. Before we get back to the start, which do you have an example in your own life of a moment, which I'm sure you have, but sometimes hard to think of course, of where you really awakened to love, that you had that experience as you're describing it, that we just talked about?
Oh, one just suddenly came back, walking along the Findhorn beach,
Yeah.
and I've been reading a bit about Eckhart Tolle, and he has some
Yes.
sort of principles for awakening. And so he was saying, don't listen to the sound, listen to the silence behind the sound. So
Okay.
I'd been listening to the waves, and then I changed the focus to what was behind, the silence. And then suddenly this bird flew past me, and my heart broke open into this total love for this bird, and
Yes.
simultaneously everyone in the world. And
Yes.
I could hold it for about 5 seconds. Otherwise, I thought I'd go bang. That was out of nowhere. The mind got still for a moment. There was no judgments flying around, and it was an opening. I've had less powerful ones. I know I had a 3-week period where actually, it was interesting. I was driving along with my friend, and
Yeah.
she started to become telepathic, and she started channeling this guidance for me. And that caused a shift in me.
Uh-huh.
And then the heart opened. And I was teaching electronics at the time. I remember looking at the young men and women in my group, feeling such love for them. I could feel the tears starting. I had to quickly turn around and draw a valve on the board to hold it together. And then walking back to the car park, I took a very long route all through the trees because I was in love with the trees,
Yes.
And then coming, I remember stopping the car because it was such a lovely vista. And in front of me was this rusty barbed wire. And I wrote my first poem about the rusty barbed wire. It looked so beautiful. I
Wow.
was in love with the colors, It wasn't this awful wire anymore.
Yes.
And these sort of experiences went on for about 3 weeks. Of course, you think they're going to last forever. And like most experiences, they start to dribble down, and lose their power. But that was sort of, what is this? This is the whole world changed. It's like, I think, the mountain I was sort of walking on, in the spiritual path. For a moment, the clouds cleared, and I saw the peak, or one
Oh,
of the peaks,
yes.
and then it clouded over, and I realized I just got to keep walking.
Oh, those are beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful examples. And is that the same as what the course would be referring to as, is the happy dream or the real world, or is that the same?
Yes. Yeah, it gives like these 3 phases. Most of us are having our nightmares. And then we move into the happy dreams of forgiveness, which opens up to the real world, which is a bit like, my own teacher, Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, called it a home away from home.
Okay.
Is the real world. It's still not the heaven, because even Jesus in the Course says, when you begin this journey, there's a lovely section in the manual, you wouldn't realize the beauty of the opening vistas.
Yes.
But even these come to an end and time stops. And what happens there, I cannot describe to you.
Yes.
So in this world, forgiveness will take us to the happy dreams of forgiveness will take us to the real world where the ego has fallen away, and we walk here in peace and in joy. And there's still more to go. In fact, I study, people who I consider awakened, like Maharshi,
Yes.
Nisargadatta Maharaj, Adyashanti, and they always say it's deepened. It keeps deepening. It never stops.
Yes.
It's not that they get a new feeling that they realize they're not separate from everyone. That doesn't change. And the ability to express that in human form, that love and wisdom, they said, keeps deepening, keeps opening.
Yes. And so are you actually expressing, awaken to love? Are you in that dream? Are you expressing love, or living love and having a connection to love? Is that what the Course would say? Because
yes, in the real world, because the ego's gone, then the love floods in, the sun shines, and that would be your mode of operation is love. You need to stabilize in it as well, because people go in and out of it for a time before they stabilize.
And so why would we still call it a dream? Because most people would say, for connection with our true source or love is flowing through us, then there really isn't anything that we would want to call a dream about that. It feels real, you know.
Well, the love isn't a dream, I agree. A context is still the dream. Here we are walking around in separate bodies in time and space. And heaven is described as, perfect oneness, and no time and no
Yes.
space. So we're still away from that.
Yeah.
And in
Okay.
fact, in the Course, it says early on in the text that if we were to connect with God completely, the brain would not last long.
Yes.
It'd burn out.
Yes.
Like my bird flying by, I couldn't hold that for long. With more practice, I could. But,
Yes.
love is so powerful. I mean, I had the opposite experience of running from it as well,
Yes.
quite powerfully, because I didn't realize in the Course it says, it lists our fears, and
Yes.
number 2 is the fear of God. The greatest fear is the love of God.
Yes.
And I met that once with Krishnamurti. I
Okay.
experienced that.
Right.
Another story if you want it, but
Yeah, that's kind of like a story which we can go there now actually to the when you're on the path, as you say, you have the fear of love, but at the end of the path there isn't any fear, and we can be living in this world, as you say, the world maybe hasn't changed. I don't know how you put it, but the form maybe sometimes hasn't changed, but we're totally present as a loving being, and that's
exactly.
okay.
With the wisdom that goes with that as well. So you wouldn't be going around preaching the Course in Miracles to everyone you can stop. Love will tell you when to talk about these things, when to talk about these things. And as it says in the manual, for some, a smile is all they
Yes.
need. Don't give them any more.
You think
So
way back, way in the real world, we don't even have any teachers of Course of Love, or Course of Miracles, sorry, Course of Miracles.
how many? Sorry, say that again. How many?
If we were all at that stage, then obviously there wouldn't be any teachers of A Course in Miracles.
No, they wouldn't need the book. We could use it to prop up our plants with and open the door. We're finished with the book because we've now got this direct channel.
Yes.
The way the mind's often explained is, it's in 3 parts. There's the ego part, the memory of God or the Holy Spirit, and the decision maker. That was a model that Kenneth Wapnick used a lot. Now, when we wake up, the ego's gone.
Yes.
So there's no decisions left because there's no 2 to choose from.
Yes.
And the memory of God, the love, the wisdom now streams through us. And, our health improves. The love is radiated. We don't matter if the body lives or dies. It's just, as the Course says, it's a tool of loving communication. That's the aim of the body, is to use it as a tool of loving communication. And if it's going to die, well, it's going to die. You're eternal. You're never born. You can't
Yes.
die.
Because I know at the end of A Course in Miracles, it talks about, forget this course, forget these words, come with open arms unto
Holy
you.
empty hands unto your God. Yeah, I love that line.
Yeah. So, and the idea is, I guess, we're wanting at somehow to go beyond the Course. But do you think people then stay with, the Course and sometimes, not fight over the metaphysics, but get really into the Course and learning it because they're scared of doing that bit at the end where you're just basically forgetting the Course and coming to love?
Yes. There's a safety in keep reading the Course. Some people keep repeating the lessons each year. Now, some are guided to do it more than once, I don't know. But in the workbook, Jesus warns, don't turn this into a ritual.
Yeah.
Don't turn these lessons. Well, you can ritualize it so you keep reading the Course and you keep doing the lessons, and it's comfortable, and you get better and better at explaining it.
Yes.
But you're in control.
Yes.
And, there's a ton of concepts in the Course, and that's to undo our painful concepts. But that lovely line you quoted, forget this world, forget this Course, and come with holy empty hands unto your God. It said there is a time to put the Course aside.
Yes.
Because you need a direct link with love. You need a direct link with God and wisdom, and that will direct you. The Course says, the Holy Spirit speaks to us 24 hours a day. Well, if we link into that, then why do you need the Course in Miracles? You don't. But then the fear comes up,
Yes.
because to get to that stage, then the ego is going to dissolve. And if it meets love, it's absolutely terrified.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so the course is coming along at a stage where we're afraid. And so we're picking it up there because the course is helping us at that stage. And then at some stage, the fear might lessen so that we could leave it.
Yes, so first the course will take away many fears and judgments, and we feel happier and happier. But then as you sort of approach, the lawns of heaven,
yeah,
then the ego begins to think, just a moment, this means something's going to happen. I don't quite understand it, but I feel threatened here.
Yes.
And maybe I can bring that story in that I mentioned about Krishnamurti.
Yeah, please.
Krishnamurti was teacher for about 12 years. I listened to no one else. I mean, he actually said, I don't want disciples, and I sort of became one. And each year I used to go and listen to him, either in Switzerland or in Brockwood Park, South England. And we always wanted to see if we could talk to him, but he was very well protected because everyone wanted to talk to him.
Yes.
There was 1,000 or 2,000 people at these meetings. So after about 11 years, I just forgot all about it. And after the talk, you go into this eating tent. And I was meandering down there, and I looked to my right, and there was Krishnamurti, about 3 feet from me, sitting on a chair, eating his lunch.
Yes.
I was so surprised. I didn't have any sort of thoughts. I just stared at him. And he sort of rather sternly stared at me, but I still wasn't thinking. I just thought, what a lovely old man this is. And suddenly his face cracked open into this sort of beatific smile, unconditional love. He put his food aside. He stood up,
yes.
He opened his arms, he walked to me, and I ran off to the other side of the tent. I waited 11 years for this, James, and I was panic-stricken because I couldn't take that love. Michael would have to disappear. I didn't know how to handle it. It wasn't like, oh, good afternoon, Krishnamurti, my name is Michael. There was this unconditional love barreling down at me. I had to get out of there quick. Now, after that, the rest of the day, I'm going, oh my God, you blew it. And then it was getting near sunset, and I was walking near the house, and he has a room at the top, and he was leaning out of the window, waving his hand at me with the same beatific smile at a safe distance of 200 meters. And I stood and waved to him back. We both smiled at each other. And later on, I thought, I value this experience. I never knew I was afraid of love.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story, yes.
Yeah, things you don't realize. You spend your whole 12 years trying to meet him.
Yeah.
And then later on, when I met some teachers I respect, again, I felt at times that fear. Like, I'm not sure how I can even communicate with them. I think I've now lost that.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of people who are listening to this video are probably thinking, that's crazy being afraid of love because they haven't had that experience you have. But what is the benefit of knowing that you are afraid of love? I mean, how does that help? I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's like the next time I'm going to meet love face to face.
Yes.
At least I'll now have an understanding. I've been prepped somewhat. Okay. And perhaps instead of running off, I'll stand there and maybe feel afraid, but it's to run off,
Yeah.
And it helps me understand what the Course is talking about, because it talks a lot about the fear of redemption, which is the same thing, The Course says at one point, you're not afraid of crucifixion.
Yes.
You're afraid of redemption. We can deal with crucifixion. We think we're crucified, most of the days of our lives, we know how to deal with it. Redemption. You're a sinless being loved by God. What? That doesn't make sense. Deep down, I still feel I'm a sinner, even though intellectually I know I'm not. And that's what Krishnamurti brought up. I'm not ready for this love yet. I want more special love, please.
And so when you realize within yourself you're not ready for that love, there's some resistance to it or whatever. I mean, what then? You could obviously go two ways with that. You could go, well, okay, I'm just never going to make it. I'm just going to be this miserable person. Or I mean, obviously you took that in a positive way, in the sense of, okay, that's a prep for the next time I come across love. Maybe my response is going to be different. But I'm imagining some people would not find it very helpful to know they're afraid of love, or it sounds like an intellectual concept. Not
I was
so.
intellectual when Krishnamurti came at me. I was in abject fear. But what also helps me is that it shows me it's a process.
A
I mean,
process.
sometimes, yeah, you read the metaphysics and
Yeah.
you say, oh, I could wake up immediately.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some Course in Miracle students go around saying, it's all a dream. I'm awake. You know,
Yes.
there's been groups, you know, where there's a cult leader and they get converted and they all go around wearing plastic smiles because they're now awake, you know. And
Yes.
yet the ego's won another battle, you know. It's great. I mean, the ego loves the Course in Miracles. It can twist it. And the Course says it can turn it into a very, very long path, which
Yes.
is perfect for the ego. But you then get polarized the other way, and like you read the metaphysics, and you say, I'm awake.
Yeah.
It's just the ego playing games with us. So it's a process. For most of us, it's going to take time, a lot
Okay.
of time, one life, more than one life. Unless you've been prepped in the earlier lives, then you could have a sudden awakening here. That's true. You could read one line of the Course and wake up,
Yeah.
but there's preparation before.
So it'd be much more honest to say I'm afraid of love rather than coming out with a statement that this world is an illusion. It would be more
Yeah,
honest.
it's more gains, you know, and you only say that because we've read it. We still treat it, you know, very much as real.
Yes.
And I've heard horror stories around this. There was a group at the time of the first Gulf War going around saying, "What war? What war?" And I thought, if I could just airlift them from New York to Iraq in front of a tank bearing down, would they say, "What tank? What tank?" Like the rest of us, they'd be running the other way.
Yes.
And one other story I heard was a Course in Miracle group. One of the members was dying of cancer, and the group went to the hospital, and there was
Yes.
the woman in bed, getting close to death, and they chanted from the Course, "You're not a body, you're free, you know, you're still as God created you, you know, rise up and join us." And that was an outright ego attack
Yes.
based on the metaphysics of the Course. She needed a handheld, she needed good pain relief. She wanted people with her at that time and join with her. You know, that would be a Course response, a true Course response, not hitting her over the head with the metaphysics.
Yes. So where do you go in that other one where you're saying like there's a tank coming towards you or there's some fearful situation in your life and you're being honest, I guess, in the sense that you're aware of your fear and you're in that fear situation and love obviously is far away at that point. So what are you going to do?
It would depend on how, yeah, it'll depend how much sort of mind training you've done. The workbook says it's a course of mind training.
Yes.
So if you've done no mind training, all the problems are out there in the world, then you're just going to panic, run from the tank,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to run from the tank anyway, whether you're enlightened or not.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
but I think what happens as you do, say, the lessons in the course,
Yeah.
and you begin to see actually the issues are in me,
Yes.
projected out into the world. The Course says the world is like an outward picture of an inward condition. Now, as you start to move along this path and your buttons get pressed, you now have like a pause, like, oh, that's brought something up in me, instead of shouting at the other person.
Yeah.
Or before you get to that stage, you shout at the other person, and then a few minutes later you think, oh, I missed that one. That was a lesson. No, I missed it. But that's great, you know. So it'll be different for everyone.
Yeah.
I think Jesus, if he decided it wasn't his time to die, would just calmly step out the way of the tank.
Yes.
You know, we might have to go rather fast, depending how the tank's moving.
Yes.
But he's not going to have anger at the tank driver,
Yeah.
and he might decide to keep walking in case they shoot him. But it'll all be done, you know, in calmness and peace.
Yeah. So I love that. So if we know the fear somehow isn't out there in the world, and we've done the mind training, and we realize there's something happening inside, then I know there's a bit of a line in the course that when we realize that there's sometimes can even be more fear because it's almost like you've brought it from out there inside, and you're going, oh my goodness,
Yes.
me.
Yeah. In fact, some course students, when they start complaining that things are getting worse. I thought it'd be getting more peaceful, and they're getting worse because they discovered that the problem's actually in them and reflected in the world, and they're the jealous one, they're the angry one, they're the hateful one.
Yes.
Oh, the others might be too, but you got to work with this. While before it was such sort of fun to blame others and join
Yeah.
your friends, blame others as well with them. Misery likes company. So yeah, things can get, oh my God, I thought I wasn't so good, but now I realized I got a Hitler in me and a this in me and a torturer in me and a rapist in me, and I don't think I want to look at this.
Yeah.
And you know, you can go into denial or put the book down for a few months before you start again. But that's all progress. It's hard.
Yeah.
No one
To
wants
see
to look
that
at the
as
stuff inside
progress.
us.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's a really important point to see that as progress. And then obviously we're asking for help, I guess, or we can't really do that.
That's at the beginning. You're so sort of scared and afraid of all this, you forget to ask for help. You know,
Yeah.
you just shut down. So that, again, as you do the mind training of the course, you're being told to call in help, and then you start to remember, oh, I could ask for help about this. Not, you know, not to say fix my broken leg, but to show me how perhaps to be at peace around my broken leg. You know, and then the mind training is continuing. Now you're beginning to have pauses. You're beginning to ask for help. You're beginning to take responsibility for your own pain. And things get easier and easier. It's an incremental progress, I find. Of course, you might hit a point where you have a sudden awakening.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. But most sudden awakenings will dissipate, well, if you've still got ego stuff to deal with. And the only way to sort of keep an awakening is, once the honeymoon period's over, you know, is to, you know, look at the things that are still there to be looked at. But there's a tendency, you know, if you do have an awakening, say by doing a Course in Miracles lesson, to sort of try and keep it. And maybe you find people are taking your awakening from you. So you go and hide in your house, you know, and I can guarantee you will lose your awakening. Because once the honeymoon's over, you're even more clear at what's inside, and you need to deal with that stuff. And in that way, you can keep the awakening.
Okay, so that's why an awakening, as you say, through a course book lesson or whatever it happens to be, will, and you were saying as well, something else diminishing, a state of, you were 3 weeks in a different state and then it gradually diminished. Is that because then you realize there's more things to forgive, or you haven't done the whole thing? Is that how
I did have a realization. I think the ego had gone skulking off in a corner during those 3 weeks.
Okay.
And the power of the experience would decrease as well. But then it sees its chance, you know.
Yeah.
And it might say, oh, look, Michael, the awakening's going, isn't it a bummer? You know, perhaps we can do something to keep it. And I listen to the ego.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
meditate more often. Oh God, it's going quicker now, you know. And so I've got unhealed stuff. I've got more clouds to look at, and I have a whole bunch of them. So I had this nice burst, and now I've got to go back to my forgiveness lessons, you know. So perhaps the next time I get an awakening, it will last longer or go deeper.
Yeah.
Backwards and forwards.
Yeah, back and forward. Yeah. Mm. So, I mean, just what came to mind there was, if we have time, which I think we have, to have a little think about, you know, that symbol in a course, which I think is quite important, you know, the dream and awakening from the dream, which I think, you know, we talked a little bit about, like the fear of love would be, I guess, equivalent to that would be the fear of the dream being over with, or would it be the fear of
Exactly. I mean, we get to a stage where we really get to see that parts of this dream are pretty awful, and I've been maintaining them, and I'm starting to work at that and releasing them through forgiveness. But there's other parts of the dream I rather like,
Yeah.
and I want to keep those. But you either wake up or you stay dreaming.
Yeah.
And so life can get better, and you might not really feel a great urge to keep going because it's rather pleasant. And I've got much nicer friends around me, and I'm more abundant now. My health's improved, and you can become complacent at that point, you know. And the ego is more subtle now and harder to spot.
Okay.
So
Right.
you might be getting spiritual pride now, and
Yeah.
you don't see it, you know. You might be monopolizing conversations with your wisdom, and you don't realize it.
Yes. Yes.
So there's more work to be done, you know. And in the end, all the dreams have to go if you really want to wake up. You know, if you've got an attachment somewhere in the happy part of your dream, it's going to block you in the end from the real thing.
But so how do you know that it's an attachment really to a happy part of the dream or loving part of the dream, and it really being a loving dream? I guess it's a little bit.
I think when it's taken away. Let's
Just
say
take it
you're
away.
having you're having a happy dream with your partner and she dies. And
Yeah. Okay.
what happens to you? Are you in deep grief for a long period? I mean, you can have, even the awakened ones seem to have grief for a short period, you know. So it goes into their heart and seems to go out like a back door. Most of us don't have a back door in the heart. It gets stuck in the heart, you know. As they feel the grief, interestingly enough, I've heard two of them say, I felt the grief, but underneath I still felt the joy.
Okay. Yeah.
Two things at once. So if it goes, you know, there may be, and will be probably, a passage of grief through you, but how quick do you spring back?
Yeah.
Do you then go into poor me and grief, you know, for a long period of time? Well, then, you know, it was part of the dream. It had a dependency factor there
Yeah.
because they were so lovely to be with. Or if suddenly all your money disappears, you know,
Yes.
how are you then?
Yeah.
So I think it's when it's taken away is one indicator, whether it's the real world or you really, through your forgiveness, got a very nice world compared to when, you know, you didn't do forgiveness.
Yeah.
And are you just attached to that and stuck there? Easily done. When you
Yeah.
had a really difficult life and suddenly the clouds open a lot, you know,
Sure. But,
people will stay there on plateaus, you know,
yeah.
understand it, not a sin, but
Mm-hmm.
you stuck somewhere on your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. But isn't that a tempting phase where you have done forgiveness lessons and you know, things, your health's better and you've got a comfortable life and somehow maybe got some status as a teacher of A Course in Miracles or
Yeah, that's
you've
very
written
true.
a couple of books, and then I wonder what the motivation. You could stay for a long time like that, I guess, until that's
Yeah.
not enough even, or there's maybe some not just taken away, but there's some underlying dissatisfaction with that because you kind of realize
Yes.
not the complete end.
Yeah, I agree, James. That you like the honeymoon period again, you know. So I become the best Course in Miracles teachers in the world. I'm the best Course in Miracles teacher in the world. Everyone's clamoring to hear me.
Yes.
At some point, it's going to get stale, you
Still.
know. Yeah, unless there's a real breakthrough, and you're just teaching purely from love.
Yes.
And then love is telling you when to teach and when not to teach. But if I've just, you know, got to that place and I'm liking the adoration, you know, and the money and all of that,
Yeah.
this is a danger for people who's in the course a long time.
Yes.
That it might serve them actually to step out for a year or two and see how it feels. Can I be not a teacher for
Yeah.
2 years, and does that feel all right? Or am I getting withdrawal symptoms? And I think that's maybe a good thing to try from time to time, you know. Otherwise, you've made the course into this vast hobby. It's also perhaps your paycheck as well. You got stuck. You know, so many places get stuck here, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, but I suppose there's that underlying it was attraction of love for love that I suppose won't leave us stuck. It'll show up in different ways where we are stuck and
Yeah, there'll be somebody knocking on your door, the Holy Spirit, saying, "Well, you've had some great years, you know, doing all this teaching, but come on, Michael, we need to keep walking, you know. And I suggest you give up teaching for a couple of years. That'll be very good for you. You know, that might be knocking on my head, you see. And I've gone through whole phases of teaching a lot and teaching a little.
yes,
At the moment, I just teach in Germany at the moment. For
yes,
the rest of the year, I'm on the island, you know. And there is like places on the path where you're in a sort of limbo land or desert land where much of the attraction of the world has fallen away,
yes,
but the spirit world hasn't dawned that strongly yet. And so it's limbo, you're caught, you're in between. The
yes,
best advice I've got on that was from Andrew Shanti, is to say, accept it. Say, I'm in the desert. Okay, I'm all right with that. And I
okay,
don't have to fight my way out of it. So there are periods of dryness, and that's before the next change, you know. And that might be giving up your fame as a Course in Miracle teacher or author.
yeah. And it sounds like you've gone through those phases, or some of those phases anyway.
Yes, and there's still some dryness around. It seems to be easing. And when I compare this phase to other phases, like 20 years at Findhorn was full on.
Yeah.
I had 3 years going around the world giving workshops. And now it's 2 weeks in Germany. And now I'm walking around the island, looking at whales, drinking tea, sitting on benches. And I know it's on one level, it's right, you know? It's weaning yourself off all the stimulation, whether it's material or spiritual.
Yes.
And that gives sort of gives God a gap, you might say, to come in. You know, you start to move more into a don't know phase, more empty phase.
There's more silence in that phase, I guess, because I remember hearing someone who's quite a well-known teacher saying that the space they had in their mind when they gave up having to organize workshops and go along to this event and this conference, and they just dropped it, and therefore they had so much silence and space for, I guess, love to make an appearance, where there was so much busyness before.
Perfect. I mean, it can be the best way to keep God out is to give workshops on God.
I love it.
The ego, you know, the older I get, the more respect I have for the ego in its ways, you know. It may have seemed crude way, you know, let's give up drug, sex, and rock and roll, you know, to excess, you know. And then it says, no problem, just give me a Course in Miracles. I can do something with that. And we're going along with it, you know. It hasn't got any power. We just think, oh, that's a good idea. It's going to make me a good teacher now and get me out. And can't blame the ego. Because I'm actually
I had that kind of experience for, it was like last year actually, after about 18 or 19 years of reading a course, I suddenly was guided to stop reading it. And there was a period of 2 weeks where I just realized that I had finished reading a course as the way I did before anyway, you know, go back into it obviously. But it was such, I wouldn't say such a relief, but it was such a peaceful place to be without, and there was nothing there at all. I was just in a peaceful space, and it was interesting. My kids then said to me, or my teenager said to me, "Daddy, you mean after all these years you've finished reading that book?" They saw me obviously with the blue book for so many years, and they go, "I can't believe it takes you so long to get through that book."
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's great that you did that. I think that's really great. I remember going to the Course in Miracles Center in England, no names, and I went down there for breakfast. It's a small table. In the middle of the table was the Course in Miracles.
Yes.
And it sort of got way of the salt and the pepper and the sauce. You know, I wanted to move it off the table, but I know there was a no-no.
All right.
So you sort of can do it a bit.
Yeah. I'd like to, because I think there's some confusion in my mind, so I'm going to use, obviously, this opportunity of talking to you. But this idea of a dream, I think it's probably, for a lot of people when they come across it, and a lot of people I talk to, they get a little bit insulted by the fact it's a dream. And then there's a lot of fear about waking up from the dream completely. And I don't know, I mean, do you think the real world is a happy dream and it's still a dream, and therefore, you know, the idea of God will take the last step? You know, how terrifying is that? So you got to a happy dream or the real world, and then it's all going to end. I don't know if you want to say something about that, or maybe it doesn't even, people are maybe just thinking about it in an intellectual way when they have some fear of their dreams ending, and therefore they just need just to go for the happy dream, shall we say, and then, you know, it'll take its course from there, and everyone's going to have their individual path of eventually waking up. Or is there something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think people, you know, project their experience onto that. And so if you're waking up from the dream, there's the element of sacrifice comes in. I'm going to lose something. I'm going to lose my friends, my money, or this, or people will leave me, and they might. Change so much, they don't want to be with you. Others do, but they don't. But of course, those that have woken up, they say, you know, why did I wait so long? You know, now, the joy and the happiness I was pursuing out there, and, you know, drugs, sex, rock and roll, money, status, best Course in Miracles teacher in the world, I've now found that happiness 24 hours a day inside me.
Yes.
It was always there. My forgiveness has uncovered it. There's nothing in the world I need to be happy.
Yes.
Therefore, the only thing I've sacrificed is illusions.
Yes.
And the people doing it were thinking of sacrifice, because deep down we think we're sinners. And so if we can get something good, it's going to cost us. But all it costs is the illusions. And of course, it's difficult to see that. But as you know, as you read more about the Course and you read about others who've woken up, and that's handy, reading about people who've woken up, because they,
Yeah.
they mention this. I have now an unconditional happiness. It's my bedrock.
Yeah.
Even with grief going through, momentarily, I haven't lost contact with the joy.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the world that I need. Therefore, there is no sacrifice. I've not lost anything by stopping dreaming. It's like waking up from a nightmare.
Yeah.
You think, thank God I've woken up from the nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. I remember when Shanti described his waking up, he burst into tears. He said, at last, after all these lives, at last I've woken up, And it's a huge relief. They describe it as that. Nothing's lost. So these are just ego fears
Yes.
that the ego's put in to say, don't go that way. You still need me. And it's going to cost you everything. So stay in the dream. Because if you leave the dream, you left the ego.
And so you could be waking up from the dream and you're still in this world.
Exactly. That was like Jesus walking around. He woke up and he just knew it was a dream.
Yeah.
And he used his body as the loving tool of communications to try and wake other people up. We needed bodies. We could, receive the abstract love of God instantly and wake up and all that. We're not there. We need an intermediary. And Jesus says, I stand halfway between you and God, and I lift you up. And so, awake people, not all of them are guided to be teachers, but they're always loving. They're a walking lighthouse, their presence by themselves heals. So, nothing to lose. Except the ego says there is.
Yeah, maybe you're speaking directly to me, Michael. Maybe that's just what I need to hear. There's nothing to lose.
I have to wake up, Joe.
There's nothing to lose. I have some fear that there is something to lose from where I am now, and that So that's really helpful, actually, for me personally, and I think it will be helpful for other people listening.
And on the spiritual path, you do lose. I've lost all sorts of things as I've gone along, because I've changed. And the people with me, in my teens, I was with a group of guys who used to go drinking down the pub, and I only wanted one drink, and actually I wanted a martini, and they were too embarrassed actually to even buy it for me, because I had to drink pints of beer. And they wanted to buy eight drinks at a time. I couldn't say anymore. You've changed. And that was the end. I never saw them again. And then you see relationships, where you shift and perhaps you stop being jealous, and they mistake jealousy for love, and they want the jealousy back, and you've lost it, and they go off and find someone else who's jealous. And I have all these sort of plateaus in my life where I've lost friends, lost relationships.
Yes.
I've been out of jobs, even though I was doing very well. I stopped being a yes man, and so they didn't want me anymore, and I wasn't promoted. So there, the ego says, look what happened to you. But after each one, I found a better partner, I found a better job, I was vibrating at a high frequency. And so the other high frequencies I met, and I got higher, and they came. And then you lost the ones beneath you.
Yes.
There weren't sacrifices when you look back.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. I actually remember a personal thing when my wife was doing a lot of spiritual changing, and she was turning into, it was like a period of a couple of years, she was turning into this different person. I was watching this, it was so, every day it was making a difference in everyday life. And I realized that, I get kind of, not that I was going to lose, you could lose her, I guess, but there was part of me going, I want to vibrate at that frequency too, or I want to join her there in looking at things in that way, or having that perception, or not being upset about those things. And I realized that I needed to, for the relationship even to continue, I really realized to meet her there. And it was just so funny in a short period of time, seeing her change.
That's a wonderful, James, way of doing it, because most people are trying to claw the person back to their vibration. My late wife, I think, was very evolved. She had a fear at Findhorn that I was going to awake before she did. That was one of her big fears.
Oh, wow.
And then when I awoke, I might not need her.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but she's probably listening now. She's dead, but she's
Yeah.
still with me, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes. I know what you're saying.
so
Yeah.
she's probably laughing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's always good to laugh at these things, and when we see ourselves,
Yeah.
I think that the awareness of what's going on is what we're talking about really during the whole of this interview, really, and the increasing awareness we have of our process and our path. I think that allows it
Yeah.
really to happen, doesn't it?
Awareness and acceptance are really rock bottom,
Yeah.
realities that we have to work with. Without acceptance and awareness, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just so it's such a loving thing to accept. Oh, okay, this is where I am right now, and I accept my fears. I'm not going to deny them, and yeah, I love those words.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge progress once we start doing that, I think. Yeah. Stop beating ourselves up for being bad course students or forgetting our lessons,
Yeah,
Some people come from a rather heavily conditioned religious background, think there's Jesus looking over their shoulders when they're doing the lesson, and they forgot to repeat it on the hour, and Jesus is going, we carry that conditioning, and we got to sort of the awareness to spot it, and
yeah,
then the laughter. Look, here I go again. I'm an old so-and-so, my religion.
yeah, and yeah, the awareness, acceptance, and there's a patience there as well, because we were talking about the process. Because I recently, or next week, I'm going to give up my regular locum job, and I'm going to go into something else, more A Course in Miracles related. And those old fears of lack came up again, but they came up in a different way. The fears were there, but I was able to look at them and accept them, and they disappeared so much more quickly. And it's kind of acceptance that maybe they'll come up again, and that's okay.
Yeah, but that's great. Yeah, they seem to repeat until they just die. We starve them to death by not judging them. They can only last so long without guilt as their food. Guilt,
Yeah,
fear, and worry. If we're laughing at them, they can't last long. They'll try again. They'll raise their heads. And they can smile again, or maybe
yeah,
they get you this time. And you smile next time. Yeah, it's simple, really. But
yes,
we've got to keep at it and realize it's a process.
yeah. And I think what I really value about this time having a conversation together, I think we've given a picture of what awakening to love is, and a little bit on the process. And I somehow was stimulated to start an interview to go there to the awakening bit with you, and for me as well. And I think it's really useful for people to know what they're going towards, and a part a little bit in the middle as well.
Yeah, all bits are nice. Yeah, we need the faith to believe, that the end is good, because we're not there yet. We need the faith, But when you read the course and you feel the love that comes off each page,
Yes.
and the lack of judgment, you think this wasn't written by somebody ordinary. This is living by someone who's living their truth, and so probably this love does exist. I'll have
Yeah.
faith that it does exist, and Jesus found it.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, I was like you. I believed in the ego too. So he's been through it, I remember him saying once, which shows, what we have to learn. He said, my very last lesson was to pass all decisions over to the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
So along the line, I might pass my decisions about my relationship, but will I pass my bank account over to Jesus?
Yeah.
Will I
Exactly.
pass my money over to him? Maybe that's one of the last things we pass over. But he was admitting that was his last lesson. So he'd been going through a process
Wow.
of passing things over. And now his last lesson was to pass everything over. And then the decision maker's gone, the ego's gone. So he's been through it all just as we have. And he did it because he was so dedicated. When you look at the people who've woken up, and the Course says the same, the major ingredient for waking up and discovering this love is to want it above all else.
Oh yeah, desire.
Yeah, but not get trapped into needy desire for it. If I double my meditation, will I experience love next week or hopefully tomorrow? That kills it again, Then there's no difference between a desire for love and a desire for chocolate. But if you sort of in your bones say, above all else, I want to know what love is, and now I'll just get on with my life of forgiveness, which will take me there.
Yeah.
That seems to be the key thing to want. Do I have a quote here? Yeah. it says here about love. Love waits on welcome, not on time.
Yes.
So the ego can say this is going to take you donkey's years, you know. But once you really, really, really want it, without all this grabbing, it then comes very quickly. But that means you don't want all the other things of the world so desperately.
Yes.
Money, sex, status, you know. And they've got to fall away. And then I want love above all else. I want to awake above all else. Then it says heaven rushes in. It says love would immediately enter into any mind that truly wants it. So you and I, if we wanted, could have that love this very instant.
Yeah.
However, there are a few other things we want instead at the moment.
Yeah. and to some extent, you know, obviously we have connected, and there is experience of during this dialogue of having and be open to that to some extent anyway. So that's
yeah. But I love those lines because it says it's here now.
yeah.
You've just got to take paper. But unfortunately, you've got your eye on a few other boxes over there. That new car, a better relationship, more world travel, you know, a better healthy body.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's not, then, you know, get on with that.
Yeah.
And then you'll come back. And when you really want it, it will appear. And that's the sudden awakening, you see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just bang, it hits.
Yeah. And then maybe other, yeah. And maybe
you
other
won't be afraid of it then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there'll be no sacrifice left. You've seen through what the world has to offer. And of course, the only purpose of this planet is to heal and wake up.
Yeah.
We have other purposes. Once you've seen through that, the fear of sacrifice is gone.
Yeah.
The space opens up in the mind, and this unconditional love has no impediment and pours in. Bingo, you're home. Congratulations.
Great. We've made it easy, Michael.
Oh, I hope I haven't made it easy.
Well, I guess I suppose it can be easy. It's what does it say?
Well, the explanation. Yeah, the explanations can be easy. The process is not quite.
Yeah, it's not simple.
Yeah,
it's, the explanation is easy. Yeah, but it's I love that. I love that. That total desire, and also as we talk about, you know, the acceptance that if my desire isn't total, or I desire something else, then that's fine. Just to recognize, you know, what's going on now is my desire for just some sort of achievement or some sort of success. And, you know, I don't desire love totally. I want that instead. And that's okay.
And you might really need to go into it. I remember Jack O'Keefe, who I like, saying, you know, she's heard people come to the satsangs for like 10, 15 years. And said, these are end of the line teachings we're giving here. And yet they've been coming for 15 years. And I asked, why have you been coming? She said, oh no, we've seen through the world. We've seen through the eye, and we're ready to wake up. And she said, it's not true. Once you dig, you find they have this buried desire. It might be, I don't know, sex. And she says to them, I love it, get into it. Go right into it. And Nisargadatta said the same. He says, you might be able to escape the small desires by watching other people fall down holes, you know, following them.
Yeah.
But he says everyone has to go into the big desires. Now, how long you spend in them, that's up to you.
Okay.
But don't think you can escape them. Look at all the Tibetan lamas that fled Tibet and went to California. And all these, you know, half-clad Californian girls are there. I was told every one of them fell from celibacy. Every single one. It was probably a very good thing.
Yes.
They, you know, they get into it, and, you know, get a balance. Same with other things. You know, if you need to earn a lot of money, okay, go and earn $1 million and find you're not happy. And then, you know, come back to the course. Don't deny it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That would be a part of the path. That maybe why it makes it quite long, because you might have quite a list of desires of what, you know, Monday, as you say, or achievement or success. And
imagining dying and having the life review, and you think, oh, I came to make a lot of money, have a lot of power, and then this priest said it was all a sin, and now I've got to come back for another life and do it. Bummer, you know. So, you know, don't go and kill people, but, you know, if there's this burning urge there, you know, well, get into it and get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, it just what came to me, and I know we're getting towards the end of our time, but it's like, I mean, do you think the world has changed in the sense that sometimes we can move through in this one lifetime, because, you know, it may not be that we have other people have other lifetimes or whatever, but is there a kind of like a speeding up that we could maybe, because I feel with it myself, sometimes I've been through like 2 or 3 lifetimes, 2 or 3 completely different sections. of my lifetime in this way around. And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had experience of that or other people.
Well, I've had certain knowledge. I listen sometimes to channels, trance channels,
Yeah.
and I've been listening a lot lately to Tina Sporting, and she brings through some very wise, loving, non-judgmental beings. And they say there are changes going on, like an increasing frequency that's actually happening.
Yes.
And this allows much faster growth, but it
Mm-hmm.
also throws up the negativity in the world at the
Okay.
same time.
Right.
So things will get worse before they get better. But they say we have this opportunity now of accelerated growth.
Yes.
And for some people, it's going to feel dreadful because they don't want accelerated growth, but the heat's sort of turned up after under everyone. So we could take that opportunity to speed up, wake up, and those that don't want it are in for a rough time.
Yeah, I find that helpful because I sense it within myself, and when other people confirm it, or just having a sense that things can move much more quickly through the desires and out the other side if you're willing to go with the ride. But it can be quite a ride.
Yes, very intense. Yeah. I mean, you go back 200 years, most of us were just living in one village,
Yes.
planting wheat, and
Yes.
hardly seeing anyone else. Just the tramp was the exciting person who came through, What's
Yes.
the stories of the next village? Now we got the internet, we got what's happening now, we can go to teachers, we can catch a plane. We have books like The Course in Miracles. There's no secrets left anywhere. And, we can use this for good or ill, we can become spiritual junkies and just spend our life going to workshops and never applying it. Or we can take some wonderful teachings and speed up our awakening, our path back to love. Yeah. It's a neutral world. Take it either way.
And I think, Michael, I think what we've discussed here and your input on that is doing that, is helping those people who listen to this video and go along to this virtual conference to speed up in their journey. Not so much speed up, but certainly look at their journey and go with the speed up if they're willing to do that. To awaken.
Yeah, and for me, doing this work is, I'm not doing a lot at the moment, doing this work is my spiritual growth, How lovingly and clearly can I put this, How much judgment will come in, So this is sometimes in workshops, I say to people, the only difference between you, the participants, and me is that you're paying for it. It's true. It's been when I first started teaching this 30 years ago, I came from teaching electronics. I taught it like a science teacher.
Yes.
And sometimes people would start crying in the workshop, and I'd go, I've got 20 points to cover in the next 15 minutes. I just ignore her, and I carry on with point, 18, and she's crying louder. It took me a while to realize the workshop was actually me reacting to the person crying in the corner and not trying to get wonderful esoteric principles across at the time. So that's where I began, It's been, the journey from head to heart is what I'm on, Somebody called it the longest journey. And doing what I'm doing now with you is part of my lesson, and I'm enjoying it. It's lovely working with you, James. Nice way to learn.
And I appreciate also that, on your website, is it A Course of Love in Australia? What's the website address again?
My website is acfip.org. acfip.org.
Yeah, and it has got so many, and you give away a lot of them free, of course, as well as your books you can buy. But the clarity that you bring to explaining, of course, whether it's for beginners or for those people at the further along in the process, I think that's a real gift, Michael. I certainly have appreciated that over the years, and I get back into it recently, just before this interview, and I really appreciate that the clarity and the way you express it is really helpful. So
great, nice to hear. Thank you. Yeah, I think you teach what you need to learn, eh?
yeah, and I love that we're learning it now, and we're awakening now and creating something. That's beautiful.
Yes, there is something that seems to be happening in the world. I don't know how many are waking up, because everything is so advertised now. The ones who wake up get all the advertising if they speak. But it wouldn't surprise me if things get worse before they get better, as we clear out the dross, Clear out. I saw a quote on the course, you have to go through the shadows, before you get to the light.
Yeah.
And so I think the shadows are being brought up in this world now. and it's our task, not to attack them, but to see it as the mirror to the shadows in us, and to have a loving response
Yes.
to, the horrors that are going. And not, it's sometimes a good thing to switch off the news, that can drag you down. You can always read Google 3 minutes, for the headlines, but to be fed by the news and all the horror, it's not very productive. And all the violent movies that are out there, to look something that's more uplifting. I think that's part of our practice as well. And, have some decent food and start eating organic food. These are important things, and exercise and being out in the sun. I think that's all part of the path to love. It's like a balanced path.
Lovely. Yeah. So, those are lovely practical things to end with. And, I really appreciate our time together, Michael. And
you too.
Thank you for joining me today. And many
Thanks,
blessings.
James, for the interview. That was great. It was great being with you. Nice sharing with you.
Thank you. And bye for now, Michael. All the best.
And you. Bye-bye.
Bye.